The Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust acknowledges Te Aotearoa as mana whenua iwi of the Rohe. The Trust would like to thank the Tākaka Hill landowners as recent kaitiakitanga who contribute to restoring and protecting the hill's indigenous biodiversity. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Charmaine Peterite toko ingoa. I'm Charmaine Peterite, the Project Manager for the Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust. The Wilding Pine Network asked if I would like to do a presentation at the 2024 Wilding Pine Conference and mentioned potential funding to cover my attendance. After several follow-up emails that went unanswered, I became concerned about the status of my invitation. Then, in a mass email, I noticed that the final list of speakers did not include anyone representing community partnerships. So, in the spirit of maybe next time, here is the presentation I would have done had I received the help to attend. I'll highlight the egregious funding inequities that community conservation groups face when tackling wilding pines, which applies to the broader conservation scene, and I'll use the Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust as a case study. In 2020, we successfully applied to the Jobs for Nature Community Partnership Program to take on over 65,000 wilding pines. Still, ongoing funding gaps impact our Tākaka Hill Management Unit control efforts. This experience exposes the more significant power dynamics while highlighting the urgent need for transparency and fair decision-making in the current funding model. Community groups like ours often find themselves left high and dry without backing of government and local authorities, which dampens conservation involvement. This presentation is a call for more inclusive and transparent funding processes. It's time we empower community conservation groups and level up our wilding pine and conservation management in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I helped found the Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust in 2018 with fellow landowners. We were motivated by our desire to protect the unique biodiversity in the Tākaka Hill area. It's also known as the Marble Mountain, known for its mist rolling up the valleys from below. A subalpine community with distinctive natural features, native species and historic sites, including kilometres of cave systems, feeding the 3 water catchments that nurture the stunning cave ecosystems, also under siege from wilding pines. The larger blocks of private land are used for farming, lifestyle blocks, industry and forestry. We've all come together to prioritise restoring and protecting our property's natural areas, knowing they play a crucial role in safeguarding our national parks. Our strategy addresses the ecosystem as we grapple with habitat loss, invasive species, pollution and climate change. Managing wilding pines is a significant part of our approach to restoring and protecting Tākaka Hill ecosystems. The left map shows all locations that have received initial wilding pine control, including Abel Tasman and Kaharangi National Parks, forest reserves and the Tasman District Council Road Reserve along Canaan Road. And on the right, that's the private project area adjacent to the national parks and reserves where invasive and native species move seamlessly across the boundaries. In 2024, we witnessed a pivotal chapter in wilding pine control. The government allocated an impressive $140 million to the National Wilding Conifer Program. This significant investment sparked hope and promoted us to consider the possibilities of transformative change in our battle against invasive species. In 2020, amid the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Jobs for Nature program emerged as a critical lifeline, creating employment opportunities while addressing urgent environmental issues. The initiative underscored the dual responsibility of economic recovery and ecological restoration, revealing that combating invasive weeds is an ancillary endeavour vital to our community's resilience. Following the Trust Pest Plant Survey funded by the 2019 DOC Community Conservation Fund, we obtained crucial data detailing invasive species locations, including wilding pines, with a grant of over $119,000 from the Jobs for Nature program. We recognised an opportunity to take decisive action. Unfortunately, the Tasman District Council assumed their contractors would manage the wilding pine crisis without our involvement. Realising the urgency, I called for a meeting with the MPI Wilding Pine Program Team and TDC. Armed with a clear vision, I asserted our role in the project. We had successfully applied for the Jobs for Nature Wilding Pine Fund, and we were prepared to engage our contractors to ensure we were employing local, not the larger organisations, because our contractors had the necessary social licence to undertake wilding pine control on Tākaka Hill's private land. The outcome of this meeting necessitated a shift in perspective for both MPI and TDC, which had been focused on a conventional hub model for managing community initiatives. This approach faltered when faced with the unique challenges of our local environment and our community conservation group. By 2021, we secured an additional $250,000, enabling us to take meaningful strides in eradicating over 65,000 wilding pines in the Tākaka Hill region by June 2023. Significantly, our efforts extended beyond private land. We ensured that public conservation areas and road reserves benefited from our initiatives to combat the wilding pine invasion. Through our collaboration with MPI Wilding Pine Program, the MPI Wilding Pine Program Team, the Department of Conservation and the Tasman District Council, once we got things sorted out, we demonstrated the efficacy of community partnerships in addressing the ecological challenge of wilding pines, and indeed potentially in all conservation areas. This experience reaffirmed that collective action is paramount in our ongoing quest to preserve and restore our natural landscapes from the threats posed by invasive species. The hub concept, an approach advocating for the centralisation of resources and decision-making within larger organisations, often presents itself as a panacea for the flourishing of community conservation groups. However, this notion may overlook the complexities and individualities inherent in diverse community. Here are several reasons why this ostensibly brilliant strategy can fall short of expectations. 1. Diverse needs. Similar to how individuals have varying burger preferences, each community faces distinct environmental, social and economic challenges. Implementing a singular, standardised solution is a recipe for losing community group engagement. Number 2, varied capacities. Community groups have diverse skills and resources. While some are skilled at collaboration and operate like seasoned professionals, others find it challenging. Additionally, funding often only allows for part-time roles, which makes individuals hesitant to participate in the lengthy bureaucratic processes associated with hubs. 3. Cultural differences. Each community is shaped by its unique values, histories and cultural experiences. Many groups prefer autonomy, wishing to steer their initiatives rather than responding to directives from a central hub. Attempts to impose external control can alienate these groups, resulting in a reluctance to collaborate. 4. Trust issues. Building trust is fundamental to effective collaboration. Communities that have experienced betrayal by larger organisations may be hesitant to re-engage, likening their experiences to lending money only to have it vanish. Gaining trust requires genuine commitment and support. 5. Geographic isolation. In remote areas, travel costs limit community access to central hubs. Inadequate resources and limited meeting opportunities hamper efforts to connect. It is essential to develop inclusive strategies that respect the needs and voices of all communities, regardless of their location. Number 6. Inflexibility. Hub models' rigidity often promotes a one-size-fits-all approach that stifles innovation. This lack of adaptability can hinder the emergence of tailored solutions, essential for addressing the unique challenges faced by various communities. Flexibility should be prioritised to allow diverse strategies to flourish. Number 7. Resource competition. The centralisation of resources can inadvertently foster competition among potential allies, pitting communities against one another in a struggle for limited funding and support. This dynamic undermines collaboration and can transform constructive support networks into areas of conflict. Establishing resource sharing agreements is vital to encourage cooperative efforts rather than divisive competition. In conclusion, while the hub concept may hold theoretical appeal, its practical implementation is often more complicated than anticipated. We must strive for collaborative models that honour and uplift every community's unique characteristics, and needs fostering genuine partnerships that enhance collective conservation efforts. The landscape of community groups is complex and often marked by stark disparities that deter ongoing efforts. Here are some critical ways these inequalities manifest. Number 1. Funding inequities. Access to financial resources is uneven, with some community groups benefiting greatly from established networks and connections, while smaller organisations struggle with minimal support. This disparity leaves many efforts feeling like an uphill battle for survival, like a party where only a select few receive invitations. 2. Capacity and capability. Well-funded groups can invest in staff, equipment and ambitious projects, enabling them to tackle significant challenges effectively. In contrast, under-resourced groups often rely on volunteers to manage crucial tasks, leading to inefficiencies and potential failure. Number 3. Representation and influence. More affluent groups fill governance roles and dominate policy discussions, amplifying their voices, while less resourced community groups remain marginalised. This lack of representation perpetuates systemic inequalities, inhibiting a holistic approach to decision-making. Number 4. Impact on communities. The effectiveness of community groups directly influences local ecosystems. Those with adequate support can effectively protect native habitats and manage invasive species. Conversely, underfunded groups risk failing in their conservation efforts, ultimately threatening the ecological integrity of larger regions, including national parks. 5. Collaboration challenges. Differing funding and influence levels create collaboration barriers. Less resourced groups often feel sidelined, leading to a strained partnership and preventing the formation of a united front essential for impactful wilding pine control work. These disparities among community conservation groups represent a significant challenge within the environmental sector. We must strive to create equitable opportunities for all organisations, ensuring that every voice has the chance to contribute meaningfully, rather than allowing only the loudest to dominate the discourse. While some councils effectively support wilding pine community groups with substantial funding, others, such as the Tasman District Council, fall short in their support. The Tasman District has only one active management unit, the Mount Richmond Management Unit, distinguishing itself as a standout performer amidst inadequate support. In 2023-24, this fortunate unit secured a significant $182,990 from the National BNZ funding and an additional $125,000 allocated explicitly for eradicating Pinus contorta, courtesy of the DOC International Visitor Levy. This situation is a stark example of funding inequity, while groups like ours struggle to gather minimal resources for their management units. This inequitable funding distribution highlights the stark disparities across Aotearoa, New Zealand. If this trend of financial neglect continues, we risk allowing invasive wilding pines to flourish unchecked, posing severe threats to our ecosystems. Without sufficient financial backing, these aggressive invaders will increase rapidly, resulting in habitat degradation, reduced biodiversity, and other complications for local ecosystems. Should our community groups be forced to suspend their conservation initiatives, we will witness the deterioration of our unique natural environments, descending into decline without redress. This is a narrative no one wants to see unfold, especially one devoid of hope for renewal and restoration. Despite our commitment, and generally community groups who rely on volunteers like us, or even the rare existence of paid staff, often find themselves overwhelmed by their workloads that far exceed their capacity, all for compensation that scarcely reflects their efforts. Additionally, these groups are consistently urged to spend time lobbying to secure essential government funding, with no guarantee that it will be dispersed to their wilding pine management units. Combating wilding pines increasingly resembles a struggle for legislative support rather than purely environmental action. Enter the Wilding Pine Network, an under-resourced group trying to unite under-resourced community groups. The Wilding Pine Network operates under the leadership of a volunteer chairperson, a committee and a part-time coordinator who attempts to manage their wide-ranging role. The Wilding Pine Network and its community groups are vying for minimal funding while well-resourced organisations secure allocations. This situation fosters a profound inequity that undermines the collective mission of wilding pine control. The disparity in resource access leads some groups to thrive, as if nurtured by abundant rainfall, while others languish without support. Consequently, community conservation initiatives resemble a chaotic game of musical chairs, where the resources are monopolised and those less connected ensure the discomfort of exclusion. Until equitable access to funding and resources is achieved, these less fortunate groups will continue their fight for survival, and that includes the Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust. And we are akin to the underdogs in an inspiring narrative. This is a story of resilience that deserves recognition and support. In stark contrast, the Wilding Pine Governance Group consists of a prominent coalition of influential stakeholders, including the Ministry for Primary Industries, the New Zealand Forest Owners Association, Federated Farmers and regional authorities such as Horizons Regional Council and Marlborough District Council. These organisations are pivotal in shaping strategies and allocating funding. Conversely, the chair of the Wilding Pine Network serves as the representative for all community groups in discussions. Still, they are limited to providing only a summary of the meeting minutes for unclear reasons. This significant resource imbalance complicates potential collaboration between the Wilding Pine Network and these key stakeholders. Furthermore, the governance group operates with a level of exclusivity, treating their agendas and meeting minutes as if they were proprietary information, leaving other stakeholders, including community conservation groups within the National Wilding Pine Programme, in the dark about critical discussions. It's reminiscent of being invited to a gathering without being informed of the theme, resulting in confusion and misalignment. Despite these formidable challenges, there remains an expectation that community groups, through the Wilding Pine Network, will continue to combat the wilding pine issue. This situation underscores the urgent need for a more equitable framework, as it is clear that increased support and clarity are essential for effective action against the invasive wilding pine species threatening our ecosystems. So let's have a look behind the curtain, unveiling the power plays and secrets in wilding pine management. Number 1. Power and decision making. Power dynamics extend beyond a single figurehead at the top. They permeate various levels and manifest through relationships and institutional frameworks. In the critical arenas of funding and advocacy, these dynamics determine which organisations gain access to financial resources and whose perspectives are prioritised. Unfortunately, community groups striving to combat wilding pines are often marginalised and overshadowed by those with established connections. Number 2. Visibility and transparency. Transparency is often absent, creating an environment akin to playing charades in complete darkness. The Wilding Pine Governance Group maintains information with an opacity that hinders community conservation efforts, leaving us uncertain about decision-making processes. Those in positions of power tend to control information as if it were a limited resource, exacerbating inequality and obstructing community groups from engaging effectively in discussions on wilding pine management. Navigating the funding landscape without clear insights is like manoeuvring through a maze while blindfolded, rendering meaningful participation nearly impossible. The lack of transparency disproportionately benefits established entities, sidelining small organisations and restricting their ability to contribute meaningfully to the conversation. These complex dynamics highlight significant inequities within the framework of the National Wilding Pine Management Programme. The secrecy surrounding funding decisions consolidates control among those already in power, leaving community groups feeling as though they are outsiders at an exclusive gathering. Acknowledging and addressing these imbalances is essential for creating an equitable system that supports community-led initiatives in the fight against wilding pines. After all, every group deserves an equitable opportunity to contribute to conservation efforts. The National Wilding Pine Programme represents a significant and necessary initiative to address the environmental challenges posed by wilding pines. While regional pest management plans increase landowners' accountability by requiring them to manage wilding pines on their properties, the situation raises critical questions about consistency in government policies, especially regarding forestry practices and ecosystem management. On the one hand, the emphasis on landowner responsibility is understandable. It fosters a sense of stewardship that encourages property owners to participate in ecological conservation. By requiring landowners to control wilding pines, authorities address the environmental threats these invasive species pose, which can outcompete native flora, disrupt local ecosystems, and impede biodiversity. The view that private landowners must be responsible for managing pest species recognises that effective environmental management often begins at grassroots level. On a more cynical basis, local authorities don't have the resources to support community groups effectively and have been directed to focus on infrastructure. However, juxtaposing this responsibility with the government's promotion of pine planting through the emissions trading schemes creates a perplexing contradiction. While the schemes incentivise landowners to cultivate pines for carbon offsetting, they simultaneously overlook the ecological value of native forests on private lands. This dichotomy reveals a misalignment in policy that will lead to unintended consequences. For instance, landowners driven by financial incentives may prioritise planting pines without adequately considering environmental impacts, fueling the wilding pine problem. Moreover, the lack of recognition for native forests in the emissions trading scheme is especially concerning. Native forests offer numerous ecological benefits, including enhanced biodiversity, improved water quality, and greater resilience to climate events. By failing to support or recognise native forests, the government marginalises these crucial ecosystems in favour of fast-growing pine species, which will not yield the same long-term ecological benefits. Integrating native forest conservation and restoration into the emissions trading scheme could shift the focus from monocultural pine plantations to a more holistic approach that values ecological integrity. Encouraging landowners to restore native forests would align with pest management goals and contribute to a healthier and more diverse environment. The funding disparities within the National Wilding Pine Programme underscore significant inequities in power distribution, necessitating prompt action. The lack of transparency surrounding decision-making authority hampers community-driven conservation initiatives, ultimately sidelining us in the struggle against invasive wilding pines. We must advocate for more equitable and transparent funding processes to support dedicated community organisations like the Tākaka Hill Biodiversity Group Trust. Our Jobs for Nature funding has been instrumental in our fight against the invasive wilding pines, threatening the precious ecosystems of Abel Tasman and Kahurangi National Parks. Unfortunately, We received no support in the latest DOC Community Conservation Fund allocations, leaving us grappling with the frustration of unrecognised contributions. Our steadfast commitment to conservation, fuelled by the resilience of community groups, positions us as key defenders of New Zealand's biodiversity. However, the spirit of volunteerism and goodwill can only carry us so far. Consistent and equitable funding is essential to ensure the long-term viability of community conservation groups. We must need stable financial resources to counteract the ongoing threat of wilding pines and sustain our ecosystems for future generations. Integrating native forest conservation and restoration into the emissions trading schemes could significantly shift focus from monocultural pine plantations to a more holistic approach that values ecological integrity. By encouraging landowners to restore native forests, we can align pest management goals with enhancing a healthier, more diverse environment. In conclusion, while the National Wilding Pine Programme and regional pest management plans are critical steps towards effective environmental management, they must be framed within a larger strategy that aligns government policies with community goals. An integrated approach that values native forests alongside sustainable pine management would strengthen conservation efforts and ensure the resilience of ecosystems for generations to come. The way forward relies on a collaboration among landowners, policymakers and community groups to cultivate a landscape that prioritises ecological integrity while achieving economic objectives. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I urge you to reflect on the vital need to transform the power dynamics surrounding initiatives like the Wilding Pine Programme. Only then can Aotearoa New Zealand truly achieve its goal of becoming wilding pine free.